time for Where Hollywood Hides. Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
We're on a mission from God.
Run, Forrest, run!
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
You had me at hello.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
I'm not going to be ignored.
Here comes the judge.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I got nowhere else to go!
Small cowbell.
That fashion.
There's anything wrong with that. You can't handle the truth.
I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star!
That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all.
I'm the dude.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Everything about it is appealing.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast number 50.
Wow.
My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
50.
Congratulations.
And to you.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. This is fantastic. 50. That's the golden anniversary, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
50 podcasts.
50 podcasts and going strong.
Today I realized that it's the 60th anniversary of the 10 Commandments movie. Do you remember that movie?
Absolutely.
You know, I went to Catholic school and you had to see the movie. They actually took you to the theater to see the movie.
It was required viewing, really?
And it was epic. I think I was, well, I won't say how old I was, but it was
Charlton Heston.
And Yul Brynner. And you remember who the female actress was?
I want to say Gene Simmons.
No, I was really surprised about this. Ann Baxter.
Oh, really?
Do you remember her in that?
Sure, I remember her, but I don't remember her in the Ten Commandments.
Neither do I.
Doesn't seem like particularly spot-on casting, does it?
No. That movie really made an impression on me. I was really good for about 6 months. And I also came across a very interesting book called Stunt Women. It's a brand new book. It's called The Untold Hollywood Story. It's by Molly Gregory. She's a bestseller now. And she interviews like 65 stunt people.
Uh-huh.
Most of them are women. From what I read, it's very fascinating. You know, these women are the women that do all the action for the actresses. They make the actresses look great.
Sure.
You know, up until the 90s, they never got any kind of recognition or anything like that. And it's just stories of individual stunt women and what they had to go through. And it sounds really fascinating.
Are you telling me that Angelina Jolie doesn't do her own stunts? Come on.
I'm not sure. You know, there's some women in the business that do a little bit more than they used to because they're pretty...
Everybody's athletic as hell.
Empowered.
Yeah.
Things have really changed that way.
Hey, speaking of books, I want to remind the audience to go to our website at wherehollywoodhides.com and pick up a copy of Where Hollywood Hides, Celebrities in Paradise. It's a full-color hardcover edition, and it features the biography, the professional biographies, and some wonderful images, and a little bit of the film history in Santa Barbara.
And some great pictures of our celebrities as well.
Right, and it's a terrific gift. It's on Amazon, and it's on our website at wherehollywoodhides.com, and you'll get free shipping if you buy direct at the website. Now, today, we're talking to a guy who is a true Hollywood icon. He's the son of multiple Hollywood stars.
A very hunky-looking guy.
An incredible star, and really a multifaceted guy. I mean, he's a black belt in Taekwondo and karate. He's a Golden Globe nominated actor. He's been in 50 feature films, over 30 TV series.
A hardworking man.
He actually has 4 pop single records I didn't know about. And he has a new book called Renegade at Heart. He's been the star of TV shows like California Fever, Air America, The Immortal, The Bold and the Beautiful, the soap opera. His major hit, Renegade, and the thing he's known for...
That was a huge TV show.
Huge, and the thing he's known for most, I think, that certainly I see because I was involved in the show, he was a major star on Falcon Crest.
I think his very first role was in Grease.
Right. He's truly one of Hollywood's Renaissance men, so let's talk to Lorenzo Lamas.
He was a cop and good at his job, but he committed the ultimate sin and testified against other cops gone bad. Now he prowls the Badlands, a renegade.
Hi, Lorenzo.
Hey, Lorenzo.
Hi, you guys.
Listen, we really appreciate you doing this. I know your schedule is absolutely manic. So, Lorenzo, our podcast is listened to by people all around the world. We have about 80 countries now. And one of the things they like to hear about most are careers and how the career kind of develops and happens and perspectives on your craft of acting. So let's go back into the Wayback Machine. You have one of the more unique Hollywood stories of all time. Could you just give us a brief overview of your origins and really how you got into the business?
I was sort of born into the Hollywood lifestyle. I mean, because both my parents were successful actors in their own right. You know, my mother, Arlene Dahl, was a very successful contract player at Warner Brothers and then Metro, MGM. And then my father was a contract player for MGM. And if you want to include my stepmother, Esther Williams, you know, she was one of the top 10 box office stars from, I'd say, the mid-40s to the early 50s. So it was interesting growing up with my family dynamic because I was just a little boy and I'd be holding my hand, I'd be holding my father's or my mom's hand walking down the street, and I'd notice people be staring at my parents and smiling, and once in a while they'll ask for an autograph. So as a very young kid, I was always aware that there was something different about, you know, my parents than, you know, my best friend David's parents who lived up the street. And then as I got older, I learned that they had fans, like people were actually like interested in getting an autograph and finding out what show they were going to be on. You know, it was kind of weird.
Did you grow up in Los Angeles?
I grew up on both coasts, in L.A. for the early part of my life, up until I was 8 or 9, and then my mom moved to New York City and left my dad in L.A. They were divorced when I was 2, so Dad was in Los Angeles and Mom was always in New York. After we moved to New York the second time, I was in 9th grade and I was sent to a military school in New Jersey. To be honest with you, I don't think my mom really knew what to do with me, with a teenager. Not only was she an actress on television and in movies, but she also had a whole line of beauty products. And Sears and Roebuck hired her as a consultant. And she would go all over the country on the weekends having these seminars. And so she was gone quite a bit. So you have this kid whose parents are almost never home, trying to figure out where he fits in the world. And I learned a lot about just kind of being flexible, I guess. And I think that helped me later in life when I found my own career in acting, you know, because you have to be flexible to be able to work with different people. You know, after one project ends, you've got downtime, then another project starts, and it's kind of like you go to summer camp. Every time a movie or a television show begins, because you've got all these new personalities showing up on day one, becoming accustomed to each other, trying to do what your skill is or what your talent is in combining with everybody else. And I think having a childhood that I did with a lot of travel and my folks gone and different schools every other year, I think prepared me for our show business. I really do.
Were your parents' careers the creative inspiration for you to get into acting?
Not in so many words, not specifically. First of all, I was a fat, chubby kid with braces and thick glasses.
No way.
So,
no way. I can't even picture that. You were like real macho.
You're the hunk.
That's
You're
right.
the hunk.
Well, that happened much later in life. I mean, I was a pretty meek and insecure little boy, you know, because of my parents' divorce, because my dad and I only had a few weeks in the summer to spend together, and I absolutely adored him. He was my movie star, you know, not in terms of what that means, not a movie, but to me, he was bigger than life. He was Charlton Heston.
Oh, sure, of course.
And I think I felt that more than anything because we didn't have a normal father-son relationship because he wasn't around. So there's this little fat kid that had this huge imagination about my father and about how he's this big star. And yet we really never got to know each other until after I had finished high school and came out back from New Jersey and moved in with Esther and him when I was 17. And then we started to know each other. But prior to that, I was a fat kid that really was the last kid to be picked on sports teams. I had a very monumentous an epiphany moment when I was in high school. This was a military school, very tough, back in the day where harassment and hazing was not particularly
it was the norm. It was the norm, right?
It was normal. It was normal. And I was having a particularly tough day. I think somebody had stripped my bed, meaning they took all the sheets and blankets off my bed and turned my rack over and emptied all my lockers on the floor. And it was an inspection, and the officer on duty that came in to inspect my dorm room put me on extra duty. So it was freezing in February. I was marching with a rifle. I'm a 14-year-old kid. And then I went to gym class, and I couldn't do a push-up, and I couldn't do a pull-up, and I could barely do any sit-ups. And my coach Stan Slavey, who on the outside looked as intimidating as the Thing, from the Marvel comic, but inside had a heart of gold. And he came up to me after the Marine Corps physical fitness that I failed, comes up and he goes, "Hey Lamas, what's wrong?" I go, "Coach, I can't do a pull-up. I can't do a push-up. I can barely do a sit-up. I'm worthless." And he goes, "Kid, you get yourself on a team, you get in shape, and you stop feeling sorry for yourself." And it's just the way you said it, I mean, it wasn't mean. I could feel that he was hurting for me, but in his manner, that's what he said. Damned if I didn't take it to heart. That day in my dorm room, or that night, I sent out for this Jack LaLanne 5-minute body shaper.
Oh, I remember Jack LaLanne. He was huge.
He had a line of products, fitness products, and there was this one thing called the 5-minute body shaper. It was basically a nylon rope with pulleys that you attach to the door handle, and you do side leg raises, front leg raises, all these kinds of abdominal exercises. And it said, you do this 5 minutes a day, you watch what you eat, you'll get in shape. I did it morning and night. I stole the book from my mom's library called The Atkins Diet, which is basically just protein and fat, no carbs. And in 6 months, when I was 14 years old, I had a 38-inch waist. I was 5'4", and I weighed 160 pounds.
Wow.
Okay. And I was a late bloomer. I hadn't even gone through puberty yet. By the end of that sophomore year of mine, when I turned 15, I got my waist down to 34. I had grown 2 inches, 5'6", and I'd lost 20 pounds. And I could do a push-up, and I could do a pull-up, and I could do more sit-ups, and I just stuck with it. And then my junior year, I went out for wrestling, and I went out for track in the fall. And by the end of my junior year, I was 5'10", 140 pounds, and that's when I started to feel good about myself.
You were blossoming,
and
for sure. Yeah.
That's what changed. And then I came out to visit Dad in the summer of my junior year, and I got a job working at McDonald's, and I rode my bike from Bel Air to Santa Monica every day to work at McDonald's. And so when I went back to school the fall of my senior year, my best friend didn't recognize me. I walked right by me.
Love it.
I said, "Kendall," and he turned around, he looked at me, he goes, "Lamas, what the hell happened to you?"
In high school, you were going to military school. Did you have any opportunity to explore theater arts or anything?
I joined the drama club in my junior year. I was a very shy, kind of withdrawn kid, and it wasn't really until my junior year that I thought, man, it might be fun to, try. Of course, I came in late, so my junior and senior year, the only parts I had were like little walk-on, 1-line, 2-line, little things. And I really didn't think I was going to go into show business, to be honest with you. I really loved animals my whole life, even as a fat kid. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and that's what I was kind of hoping to go for. I applied to Cornell. I applied to UCSD Davis. I just didn't get in. And after I graduated high school and came back out to L.A. to live with Dad, I took a year off, and I went to SMC, took some courses, criminal justice, and I took some theater courses. And that's when I kind of found my calling, as it were.
Were your movie star parents encouraging in any way? Did they support this?
It's funny because, I was working as a trainer at Jack LaLanne's in college. When I was 19, just before I got grease, I was 190 pounds. I could bench 240. I was a big kid, and my dad was a middleweight boxer in Argentina, So even from a young age, he taught me kind of how to protect myself, He had me hit the bag. I learned jabs and crosses and, uppercuts and things like that. And we horse around all the time, just kind of light sparring and stuff. And as soon as I got, to be bigger than him, he didn't want to spar anymore.
So did Esther or your mom? Did any of them say, you've turned into a tall, good-looking guy? Why don't you think about acting? I mean, how did that happen?
I went home one day after doing a production at SMC, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I think I want to be an actor. And there was a long pause, and then Dad said, oh, shit. And he said, are you sure? Because just because you have a name, Lamas, doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful actor. As a matter of fact, I don't want you going out there and embarrassing me. Before you do your little acting thing, we're going to have a test. You're going to do a screen test for me.
Wow.
And I said, well, okay, how is that going to work? And he said, you're going to go outside the house. You're going to think of a scenario. You're going to think of a scene, an event, something. We're going to do an improvisation, and Esther is going to be your scene partner. You're going to knock on the door from outside. Esther will answer the door, and I'm watching the whole thing. And you're going to come in the house, and you're going to improvise a scene.
That's a lot of pressure.
I said, okay. Now, mind you, my father and I were now very close. He was a very loving father. We goofed around a lot. We watched a lot of sports. Esther was in the kitchen, always serving my father. It was a very, very normal family unit at that point. Esther was home. Dad was pretty much home unless he was directing television. But for the most part, he was home. And I was working. I was a trainer, and I was living in the garage in their house in a van.
There's a fascinating story in your book that I recommend our listeners read, because the story of why you were living in the van in the garage is a crack up.
So I come into the house, and Esther's standing there. And I said, Esther, something terrible happened. And she said, what, Lorenzo, what? Like she was acting. What, Lorenzo, what happened? And I just looked at her, and I took a second, and then I said, I ran over a dog.
Oh, my.
Just down the street. And she was like, what? I said, and my voice trembled a little bit because I was starting to think about what I would feel like if I ran over a dog. And I said, I ran over a dog. And she said, oh, Lorenzo. And she hugged me. And we went to the living room, and she said, how did it happen? And then I devised this whole story about how I ran over the dog at the beginning of the West Gate of Bel Air. I looked around for an owner. It didn't have a leash or a collar on. I put it in my car. I was thinking then maybe I should go to the beach, maybe and bury it there, or what. I didn't know what to do, so I came up here. And she said, where is it? And I said, it's in the trunk. And I started to cry. And then Esther started to cry. And then Dad said, oh, for Christ's sake, you two. All right, Lorenzo, you can act.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
So he called a friend of his, Tony Barr, who was an executive at CBS. Bob, do you remember Tony Barr?
Sure, absolutely. Became a very well-known acting coach.
He was a great acting teacher, and he wrote a book called Acting for Film. And he had an acting school in Burbank on the Warner Brothers lot called the Film Actors Workshop. It was an excellent school because one week we would work on scene study, the next week we would work on lighting, the next week we would work on camera and framing. So we learned all the aspects of film and television. And I was still working at Jack LaLanne. So during my breaks at work, I would go into the trades, into Variety and Hollywood Reporter, and they had films and television production, the whole thing, every Thursday.
Right.
And I would go into the back, it's like where the ads are, and I would call every single number that either had a casting number or a production number. And I would say, I'm Lorenzo Lamas, I'm Fernando Lamas' son, and I'd like to come in and read. And out of 100 phone calls, 2 people would ask me to come in. And I did it for about a year before I ever got a part for anything.
So Lorenzo, tell us about your audition for Grease.
Interesting, because my mother asked me to escort her to the Academy Awards in 1976.
How fun.
Yeah, and she was out here in Los Angeles from New York visiting. She was going to the Academy Awards, and she asked me to be her date. So this is terrific, right? I'm 18 years old, and I'm taking my mom to the Academy Awards, and that was the year that Rocky got Best Picture. And we go to the Governor's Ball, and Shirley Eder, who was a very, very good friend of my mother's and a publicist, a top publicist in the business, she came to the table that we were sitting at, and she said to Arlene, to my mom, she goes, Arlene, I want to introduce Lorenzo to Alan Carr. And my mom goes, oh, wonderful. I don't know. I had no idea who Alan Carr is, right? We go over, and Alan Carr is at this, he's kind of short, little pudgy, big glasses, wearing a caftan. And Shirley goes, Alan, this is Arlene. And she didn't even get Arlene Dahl out of her mouth. And Alan goes, oh my God, Arlene Dahl, you are so beautiful. You look, I can't believe, you haven't changed. And so he's fawning over my mom. And then my mom goes, oh, well, you haven't met my son Lorenzo, who's going to be the next big movie star.
Oh, wonderful.
I love it.
Mom, you're killing me. Don't say that. And she goes, oh, don't be silly. Alan, this is my son Lorenzo. You should put him in your next movie. And Alan looked at my mom and smiled and looked at me, and he goes, well, maybe I will.
That's a great story.
So that was that. I don't know who he is. My mom tells me he's a producer.
For our listeners who may not know this, Alan Carr was one of the great impresarios of the 70s, and he transitioned, he kind of walked that tightrope between Broadway and Hollywood. And he would find material, he would find Broadway material and bring it to the Hollywood studios and make these huge musicals. And he was really the driving force, I believe, who got Robert Stigwood involved to bring the music into Grease.
He absolutely was. He was absolutely the driving force. And do you know that Paramount gave that movie absolutely no hope? They fought him on the budget. It was only, I think, $20 million or $30 million to do the whole production in 8 weeks.
So you had your mom in your hip pocket, and now you have Alan Carr saying, "Well, you know what? I'm in love with Arlene Dahl. Why not talk to her son?" Did they bring you in to read? Was there an audition process? Did they give you the character?
There was an audition, but I'll tell you, Alan, it really wasn't. It was because of the introduction at the Governor's Ball. But then a year went by before I heard anything. I probably wouldn't have been in the movie if Gerald Ford's son, Stephen, wasn't able to complete the role, because they had originally cast Stephen Ford as the jock that steps in his football hall.
Uh-huh.
Something happened during rehearsals, and Stephen was uncomfortable with it. I really never got the full story. But that's when my agent, Mike Rosen, called me and he said, Lorenzo, Alan Carr wants to see you. It's not for one of the T-Birds. It's for something else. And I said, okay. So I went to Paramount, and I saw Alan Carr again. And he goes, Lorenzo, I think we might have something for you. And I go, well, what is it? He goes, well, you're a big, strong kid. Would you mind playing a football player in our movie? You don't have any lines, but you're in a lot of scenes. And I said, of course, And then from Grease, I got a part in a Jerome Hellman movie with Marsha Mason called Promises in the Dark. And then I did a movie as a high school wrestler. I kind of played a series of jocks for the first, 5 or 6 years of my career. And then in television, Jimmy Comack, who produced Welcome Back, Kotter and Chico and the Man, he wanted to put me in on a television show. So I did 2 pilots for him. Neither one of them got picked up. And then after the second one didn't get picked up, that's when Mike Rosen, my agent, called me and he said, there's a Lorimar pilot. And it basically put me in the Lorimar, on the Lorimar kind of actor list. So that when the vintage years came around, my agent called Lee Rich, and he said, Lee, you should see my client Lorenzo Lamas for the role of the grandson.
Now, Lorenzo, did Jane Wyman have much to do with the casting?
I don't think so, and I didn't test with her. My audition was with Billy Moses. I auditioned 4 times for the part. I don't know how many times Billy auditioned for it, but I auditioned 4 times. And when we went to CBS, when we went to Television City for the final audition for Earl, and Billy and I made a pact together in the hallway. We said, you know what, let's rehearse this together like we're going to do it in the room. And I said, that's a great idea. And so we rehearsed it. We'd never met each other before the audition.
That was smart.
We took 20, 30 minutes, and we went in together on this, like as a team, instead of him going in separately and me going in separately. We went in as a team, and we nailed it. And they cast Billy for Cole, and they cast me for Lance.
And the rest is history. You're the only cast member, I believe, to have appeared in all 227 episodes. Is that correct?
That's the truth. I don't remember missing an episode.
That's quite a testimony. That's a testimony to your endurance, because that's a long haul.
Yeah, well, Bob, I was in my 20s,
right.
Now, Lorenzo, rumor has it among the cast of Falcon Crest that you were one of Jane's favorite people.
Well, I think she was harder on me than a lot, because perhaps I represented not only myself to her, but also the memory of my father and my mother, and she kind of, in a way, sort of became my real grandmother, and we would have talks in her little honey wagon, not just about the scenes we were going to shoot that afternoon, but about my family and, how I was doing, and which made it all that more difficult not to stay on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, you showed up on time because you knew she was waiting for you. As I recall, Jane really set the example and the pace for everybody on the show, which I appreciated so very much as the guy responsible for getting the show shot on time. But tell me a little bit about that ensemble for you. I mean, everybody on that show was really, I think, probably among the best actors on television then and now. Susan Sullivan and Bob Foxworth and David Selby, and these are the A-grade players. And there you are, 21 years old.
Thank God for Tony Barr's acting workshop.
Well,
because it did prepare me for the fast-paced television film process. And what I learned from working with these heavyweights, there was one particular day when I was really struggling with some dialogue, and it was a scene with Jane. I was like the fourth or fifth take, and I'm going up on my lines, and I just can't get it together. And Jane said, everybody take 5. Just take a break. So the crew, took 5, and she said, come over and sit down. Jane would have her little chair and a little table, and on her table was a box of Nabisco Nilla wafers and a pack of Vantage cigarettes. I swear the woman existed on those two very things. And she goes, what are you doing? And I go, I'm trying, Jane. I'm trying to make something out of the line. I'm trying to make something out of what I want to get across. And she goes, Lorenzo, they're just lines on a page. Know them, say them, and let the rest take care of itself.
Very good advice.
You're right. I mean, it was so simple. Just know your lines and say them.
I'm not going to let this conversation go without touching upon 2 points. You were 21. I was much, much younger as well. And I had this enormous responsibility thrust upon me. It was really the first show that I was in complete control of. And the day you showed up on a motorcycle, do you remember that day?
That was in Napa Valley, right?
I went nuts because I'm worried that my star, Lorenzo Lamas, is going to hurt himself. And I made a deal with you. I think I actually talked to your agent. I said, look, if he's going to ride a motorcycle, we're going to start writing him out of stuff because I can't depend on him being healthy. And you didn't ride a bike for the rest of the time that I was there. I want to say I appreciate that because it kept us on track. And the other thing I want to talk about is tattoos.
Yeah, not a lot of actors had them back in the early 80s.
Not a lot of Americans who hadn't been either in prison or the Marine Corps had them. And you showed up on the set one day. You showed up on the set with your very first tattoo, which I think, because I remember this vividly.
Was it your first, Lorenzo?
Well, let's see which one Bob's saying.
Okay, it was either a dragon or a unicorn that came up off your trapezius, off your shoulder, and it went up your neck above your collar line, and it became a makeup issue for us.
Came to you with a tattoo on my right shoulder of an eagle and a shield.
Right.
Carl,
sure?
our key makeup person, he didn't have a lot of experience in covering tattoos, and he tried many, many different things. The problem is that, Bob, you had me with my shirt off probably 90% of the time.
That's because that's what the ladies wanted to see that.
Yeah, that's because you were not a chubby 14-year-old.
No. So I spent half of my first television series in a makeup chair with Carl Silvera spraying shoe polish on my body. They didn't have Dermablend. They didn't have the great tattoo cover that has latex in it. The earliest tattoo cover was actually spray-on shoe polish, and they had to match my skin tone.
Lorenzo, we had many production meetings about your tattoo. Believe me.
I know, and it just this is the 20-year-old part of me. When I came home and showed my dad my first tattoo, he was pissed.
I'll bet. I remember, your dad directed an episode of Falcon Crest while I was there, and I heard a lot of wonderful things about you. He was so proud of you. He was what you want for a father. And I asked him, we have a big cast. Be sure that you give everybody enough coverage. He says, I'm not giving my son any additional coverage. He was very strong about that. He didn't want to be seen showing any favoritism whatsoever. So while you're doing Falcon Crest, the later years, you began branching out into other guest roles. roles, and you eventually wound up, we won't even talk about the length of your resume. My God, you've been on every single show. You've got 5 series under your belt. But Renegade became really the one that really cemented your persona in the culture. Tell me how that show came about.
It came about at the right time. At the right time for the audience, certainly at the right time for me as an actor. And I'll tell you how it happened. I had auditioned for Stephen Cannell on many of his other shows, from Wise Guy to 18 to Sunny Spoon to 21 Jump Street. I mean, I pretty much auditioned for every single production that he had on the air, and I never got a part, And it was always, my agent would tell me, yeah, they really liked your reading. It's just they were looking at somebody else. You're always going to be too tall, not tall enough, too, Anglo, too Hispanic, too this, too that, and it never fit. So one day, my agent calls me, and he said, Stephen Cannell would like to take a meeting with you. And I said, oh, okay. So I get my car, and I drive down to Hollywood Boulevard, where he has his big production office. And I go up, and I walk into his office, as I've been many, many times before. I'm trying to stay cool, I'm using every single sense memory about when I thought I was cool. I'm trying to stay, because this is Stephen Cannell, right?
You're sitting across the desk from one of the most powerful television producers in history.
So he goes, Lorenzo, I've got an idea for a show, and I want to get your take on it. It's about an ex-cop who gets framed for a murder that he didn't commit. Basically, he's testified against bad cops, and they put a hit on him, and they don't kill him, but they kill his girlfriend. So he's running from the law like the fugitive. Anyway, I'd like you to take the script home, and then give me a call after you read it, and let me know what you think. Oh, my God. I drove to Will Rogers, and I sat and I read that script like within an hour of that meeting, and it was the perfect role for me. The guy knew how to handle himself physically. He rode motorcycles. He was a sympathetic character with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he was framed for murder.
He had a tattoo.
And he had a tattoo.
How long did the show last?
5 seasons. We lasted five seasons.
So you've had some incredible runs. I mean, Falcon Crest, Renegade, Air America, The Immortal. I noticed that a lot of your characters have a name that starts with an R, which is interesting. I guess that yeah. Reno Reigns really set a tone for you, didn't it?
Yeah, I fought the producers on Air America. They gave me the name Rio. I said, "Oh, come on, can't we be a little bit more original?" I mean, I just last year I was playing Reno. Now you're going to call me Rio?
Yeah.
Well, we'll just call you Arnett. I said, fine. So every once in a while they throw Rio in, and I'd say Arnett.
So since then, you have been extremely active, first in guest spots in a number of shows, and then appearing as yourself, I think, over 100 times in various productions and documentaries, and actually playing the character of Lorenzo Lamas in some things. How does that, as an actor, how does that feel, becoming almost a character yourself?
It's not great. It's just not great. And had I had a little bit more luck, I guess, after my last television series, The Immortal, in terms of scripted, I probably wouldn't have done reality. Because reality is just something I had to do because I had 6 kids, I had a couple of ex-wives, and I just needed to work. And I wasn't getting offered roles on network television because I'd been away from it for so long. I didn't know the casting directors anymore. My agents couldn't get me in the door to read for NCIS or any of those great shows in the 2000s.
But then again, just as you went from network to syndication, you were kind of the forefront of that. You became a serious reality television show star. I mean, you were always at the crest of a wave, which I find remarkable.
I think I had maybe a little bit of luck there, but it wasn't something that I would have rather done over acting roles. I really tried to get my agents to really focus on the acting, but agents and managers are going to be focused on the dollar.
Did you ever think that reality TV was going to last?
I did think it was just kind of a temporary thing, but boy, it's proven me wrong.
Yeah.
Really, it really has, and I think it's really affected not only the quality of the shows that we see on the air now, but it's also, I think, damaged the audience's ability to discern talent. To give you an example, they're now casting people that have strong social media presence in television and motion pictures.
Right.
They're giving them roles, acting parts. They're not actors, but they're giving them the parts and taking those parts away from real actors because the industry recognizes that this person has 150,000 followers on Instagram. They're going to be tuning in to the show or the movie.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit depressing, to be honest with you.
Tell us how your book came about, Renegade at Heart, which I must tell our audience is a fantastic read. It's several hundred pages of the most honest autobiography I think I've read in years.
I really enjoyed the way it was written. It was a great page turner. I couldn't put it down.
So how did the book come about, Lorenzo?
Well, thank you both. I wanted to write a book that was going to be a good, quick read. I didn't want to read some hyped up, holier-than-thou press release about my career and my life, because I think there's a chance to help people when you write a book, people that may not know who you really are, and they might not know the insecurities that you really have. And I really tried to write a book that would be helpful to folks. Give them a laugh, make them maybe wow them a little bit with, I can't believe he just did that, or I can't believe he said that.
Absolutely.
You know?
There are plenty of those moments in the book. The thing that really got to me was just how open you were in writing about your childhood and how that has had a lifelong impact on you. I think it's a real good example for everyone. Listen, nobody's childhood is perfect, but not everybody manages to create such a positive life for themselves as you have. And I just want to tell you, maybe this is presumptuous of me. I'm real proud of you, having known you as a boy and seeing what you've become as a man. And I think it's exemplary. And I just encourage everybody to take a look at this book if they want to see the story of a real man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's a wonderful thing to say.
So before we go, and I know you're super busy, I have two quick questions for you. One is, what advice would you give to an 18-year-old guy who thinks he wants to become the next Lorenzo Lamas?
Well, you don't want to be anybody other than who you are. So as much as I would love to be, the next Aaron Rodgers, right? You can only hope to be the best Lorenzo Lamas or the best Jack Smith that you can be. It's perfectly fine to have people that you look up to, but I wouldn't pattern a life trying to emulate and become another copy of that individual.
And for those who think they want to become an actor?
I would start on stage immediately. And this is something that I learned way, way later in my career. During the years when I was really struggling to feed my family, I was given an opportunity to do a musical, to play the King in The King and I. First time ever on stage. I did a couple of little parts in high school, but this was and some college, but this was people they were paying money to sit in their seat and watch me up on that stage entertain him for an hour and a half. And it is at once the most frightening thing to do and the most exhilarating thing to do. And I don't think an actor can really truly say they can act until you've dealt with the stress, the anxiety, the butterflies, the stage fright of having to go out on that stage without a net and be a character. So I would just tell anybody that wants to be an actor, get yourself to a theater and learn how to act for the theater, because that will give you the confidence to be honest in your character. I thought I was an okay actor, in television and such, but I didn't really become the actor until I got on stage. It's remarkable.
Now, Lorenzo, looking back, do you have a favorite role of all time?
Yeah, it's Renegade. I've got to tell you, it's just that part fit so close to how I would love to have imagined myself. The character I played was a very noble, always did the right thing, never slipped up. He was just like this character that, personally I hope to emulate as much as possible. It was just so much fun to play.
Well, it was a true. He's a true hero. Reno is a true hero.
And then on the other side of that, I really enjoyed playing the King on stage. The King and I did it on 3 different occasions. The fact that my father also did the role on stage was something very touching and resonated with me. My mom gave me some pictures of him in costume on stage playing the king, and I put those pictures up in my dressing room. I would kind of like do a little prayer to the Lord to just give me the strength to get through a performance, and then I look at my dad and I go, "Let's do it, Dad," and I walk out on that stage in that opening scene. But that was a great part. It is a great part.
What a great inspiration to have your father there with you even then. So listen, you've had a career as an actor, a producer, a director. Now you're an author, but you're also an aviator. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been flying for quite some time now. I started flying airplanes in 1997 after Renegade was wrapped. I had a little time on my hands, and I learned how to fly. I would rent an airplane, and later I bought one.
You're more than just a guy with a private license. You're an instructor. You're a helicopter pilot. My God, this is not easy stuff.
Yeah. This business, I'm talking about show business, it is at once exhilarating, and, when you're at the top of the food chain, you just can't work enough. And there's also points in your career as an actor when, there's times, months, sometimes, years go by without really working. And I had to figure out another way to support myself. So I went back to school. I went back to flight school and became a helicopter instructor. And I started teaching to get back, in the air and build time. It's great fun, and I love putting smiles on faces.
Yeah, it's a fantastic evolution, I must tell you. Lorenzo, I can't thank you enough for doing this. What's in the immediate future for you? Any projects coming up?
Things always tend to come up. I tend to work with people that I have a relationship with, producers and that I've worked for, directors that I've worked for. But I'm really pursuing what I enjoy the most right now, which is putting people in my helicopter and showing them the sights.
All right, man. Listen, thanks for your time. Thanks for doing this. I think that our audience is going to hear the story of someone who has been through it all and is really going to be the last man standing.
Thank you, Bob. I hope you're standing there right next to me. It's been great. It's been great talking to the both of you.
All right, man. Take care.
Wow, that brought back a lot of memories.
It sure did. Boy, yes, he matured well, huh? What a great guy. His book was really a fascinating read because he really does tell everything about his early life and his professional life and the people he worked with.
He's been through a lot, and he is a survivor.
He is. And, he's very active on social media in his kind of new career as a helicopter pilot. He does some fascinating stuff.
That's dangerous stuff, isn't it?
It is. And, flying helicopters is not something that's particularly easy. So I really respect the guy. And remember, this is a kid who started on motorcycles, and I thought he was crazy then. And he's proven me wrong. He's really doing well. Fantastic conversation. Wonderful to talk to him.
He sounds like he's turned out to be a nice human being.
And now he's a published author. Fantastic. Which reminds me, I want to remind our audience, please go to our website at Where Hollywood Hides. You'll find a link to Lorenzo's book there, Renegade at Heart, as well as our book, Where Hollywood Hides, Celebrities in Paradise. Full color hardcover edition. It makes a great gift. You'll find it on Amazon as well as on our website where you'll get free shipping at wherehollywoodhides.com. So number 50, this has been fantastic, Suzanne. Let's do 50 more.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our followers. It's been a fun journey, something that we just started because we wanted to share our stories, and it's been terrific. It's been great therapy. We've talked to a lot of people that we worked with in the past, and it has been so much fun, and I hope to do 50 more.
We have listeners in over 75 countries worldwide, so the impact of this is pretty phenomenal.
It's really taken off for us, and again, want to thank everybody. So,
until next time,
this is Suzanne Herrera McCullough
and Bob McCullough.
We'll see you in the movies. And today's music is provided by Chance McCullough. You can find more of his original soundtracks at chancemccullough.com.
Well, that's it for this episode of Where Hollywood Hides. If you enjoy listening to these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast. It's easy. Just go to itunes.com/wherehollywoodhides. And while you're there, it'd be great if you could give a quick rating and a short review. It really does help get the word out. And you can find all kinds of cool stuff and show notes about each of our celebrity guests on the website at wherehollywoodhides.com. And while you're there, you can even leave your comments and get in touch directly with Bob and Suzanne. They love hearing from you.
Chilicopies and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights.
All armed with photos from local rotos with their hair in ribbons and Hooray for Hollywood. You have no way of knowing who'll make good.
Maybe you'll be another Papa Dion, your name and Neon. If you get lucky, you could. Yes, buddy, you'll arrive if you can top his 5. Hooray for Hollywood.
Hooray for Hollywood. Hollywood and Woolly Hollywood. They hire cowboys and then hang their chaps up and doll their masks up and give them all that they lack.